Hello, everyone. This webinar is being recorded. Thank you for joining our webinar today titled Introducing HeadSpin Create-Your-Own-Lab. Please remember, you can put any questions into the Q&A tab and we will answer them at the end of the event. Our presenters today are Brian Caldwell, co-founder and CTO of HeadSpin, and Ilya Draitser, VP of Worldwide Customer Engineering. Brian, I hand it off to you.
Great, thank you. And welcome everyone. Thanks for joining our event. Really excited to share with you some of the technology we're working on. And we call it HeadSpin Create-Your-Own-Lab. So at HeadSpin, we're always looking at new ways to help teams be more efficient, to help teams iterate faster. And what we've noticed is many of our users have a scenario that looks like this. We have devices on our desk. We have devices in a lab that we've already procured. Whether we're small developers and we just have a few devices sitting around, or whether we've been running our own in-house lab, we have a scenario where we have a ton of devices and a ton of capability, maybe in one location, maybe in several locations with satellite offices. And HeadSpin, our mission is to make it easy for your team to collaborate and use these devices to be more efficient. So HeadSpin as a platform lets your team use these devices to speed up your issue debugging, to speed up your iteration on real edges. So to be able to actually iterate and develop and push changes and see how changes are working on real edges from anywhere. So your entire team, anywhere in the world, to debug and use devices in the field. So to really get in there, run your code, measure your code, use your existing tools on these devices in the field to run automation at scale. We have a deep practice of running automation on real devices and real endpoints, which can do everything from driving your user journeys so you can see how your real user experiences are working on these devices, to driving other teams' initiatives, such as performance teams and reliability teams, and helping them measure data and measure the endpoints. Our platform collects deep user experience and performance data from every interaction on the device. We can collect network traces of the device, the video of what the user sees, the function call statistics from within the code executing on the device, system statistics such as CPU and memory. So we're able to collect that data from all of these devices out there, on your desks, on your labs, hosted in our platform. We're able to take that data and find regressions, find where experience is getting worse, help your team really isolate the areas of risk that they can use to test further and really be more efficient with their testing based on where there are the most user experience issues, or potentially the most user experience issues, and to use your existing test practices across teams. So for the product teams, the performance teams, the reliability teams, to all collaborate on the existing practices. So using those automation skills to drive initiatives across more teams. And so we view HeadSpin as a platform that can take these devices in and then provide these capabilities for your teams to collaborate and be more efficient. And so what does that look like? At a high level, whenever you plug in a device into the HeadSpin platform, you get a view into that device. So you're able to see the device in our UI, and this is all a web UI. You're able to interact with the device. You're able to step debug the device, view the logs of the device. And this opens up immediately some really interesting scenarios. So we've seen some of our customers work with their testing team who are doing manual testing, and basically have all of those manual devices in people's hands plugged into the HeadSpin platform. And so as the testers are running manual tests, you can actually see what's going on the screen. So you can see exactly what they're doing. You can connect your step debugger to debug, maybe critical points. If they hit a bug, you can immediately hop onto the device and debug it on the spot, avoiding sort of the whole chain of filing tickets and trying to reproduce. The HeadSpin platform, because you have the device connected, you're able to go directly into the device and debug. You're able to record the video and performance statistics of the device as it's being used. And this opens up new iterative scenarios with your testing team in the field. Your testing team can be running the test, and your engineers can actually be watching and debugging on the spot instead of going through a cycle of tickets. And we think this is very exciting, not only for the testers, but for the engineers who are iterating. As you're building your product, as you're building new features, you can now test and iterate on the edge. So I can take my test builds and I can publish them to the edges, and I can see how they're working on these real locations. And so one thing that's really great is the ability to collaborate with your team more deeply. So if you have a team, and this is something that we're all doing right now, we're distributed, we're in different locations, and you're trying to test how your application, your product's working in different locations, you can actually ask your team member to plug in a device and allow you to just test your build directly on the device on her desk, and vice versa. If your colleague is testing your part of the product and she notices an issue or an improvement, instead of sort of going through this process that we're all familiar with, where screenshots and tickets and Slack channels, what the HeadSpin platform lets you do is really your colleague can just connect the device, and then you can hop on directly and see the device exactly in the state that could be improved, right? You can see what the issue is, you can debug it, you can use it yourself, your colleague can use it, you can use it together, just as if you were in the same room holding the device, next to each other. HeadSpin allows that level of iteration and collaboration on these devices. And that's something that's really wonderful about Create-Your-Own-Lab, is that we make this extremely easy. We'll go into how it works. It's basically just a single command you run to connect these devices, but it's extremely easy. So you can also run automation at scale once you connect these devices. So every time a device is connected to the HeadSpin platform, you get an automation endpoint on the device. So the automation endpoint is a WebDriver URL and a set of capabilities. This is standard Appium for an Android device. And what you can do is you can copy this configuration out, put it into your existing automation as is, and your existing automation will work and just run on these devices. And so what's really great is that the HeadSpin platform has a number of APIs and load balancers that help you scale up your automation. So if you have automation that's currently running maybe on a single CI/CD server or on a different cloud platform, you can easily connect devices to HeadSpin Create-Your-Own-Lab and start running your automation on these devices. So it's really just a matter of plugging in the configuration, and then your automation can run, in multiple locations. You can use HeadSpin in addition to what you're using now. You can start moving more tests to HeadSpin. You can start testing more locations. And what's really great about this is it's real locations, real devices, and you're able to start, really testing these real endpoints. And we think this is super easy to get your automation working on these Create-Your-Own-Lab devices. And then you can start collecting data and seeing results of your automation. What the data collection looks like is every time you're using a device on the HeadSpin platform, every time you're running automation on the HeadSpin platform, we have the ability to collect deep user experience and performance data from that device. So from a manual perspective, you see this UI where you're able to multi-touch and interact with the device. You're also able to scan a QR code and open the device in your hand. And at any time you have this device open, you can tap this record button and you can record a deep statistics of the performance and user experience. And so when you tap the button, what happens is the button turns green, and then everything you're doing is recorded. And then when you're done, you get a link to a recording session. And so the recording session is a bunch of traces of data, as well as some other data sets that you can download, such as PCAP files and log files that are all aligned on a common timeline. And you're able to scroll down through the data and see how everything's come together, how the function calls and the network traffic come together. And what we do on top of the data with HeadSpin is we analyze the data for areas of risk and areas of user experience. So where is the user experience poor or could be better, where is the application performance could be better. And we highlight those in orange, and we also list them on the left. So you can see that there's different, in this example, there's different areas where the network use could be better. We could be using our TCP connections better to improve the user experience. There are areas where the screen is blank for an extended period of time over a second. That's something that, you know, our system is highlighting that you can look at. There are areas where you're downloading image resources that are unoptimized or you know, not compressed correctly. There are areas where your DNS is sharding across different domains, causing your app to connect to use more connections than it might need to. There are areas where your application's sending duplicate, in this case, it looks like HTTP 2 or HTTP requests. And there's no need to send duplicate messages. It could be a client-side caching issue or a client-side issue. And so we're able to identify these sort of little signals that add up, and they add up to an overall slowing down and making the user experience slow. And one of the great things about HeadSpin is we run many of these analysis on every data run, and we surface up automatically these areas of risk in your application where you can improve. And so instead of your team having to sift through literally thousands of data points on every test, our model at HeadSpin is that you run your test, you collect the data, and then HeadSpin system runs ML to analyze your data and surface these issues to you. And so these issues are surfaced in a UI. We also have a database that backs all this data. So all this data is streaming in real time into a SQL compliant database that you can then pull data out with your existing ad hoc queries and your existing dashboards. And so what you get out of the box with HeadSpin is you're using your existing testing practices, running automation on these endpoints, which you've plugged in with Create-Your-Own-Lab. They can be on desks all around the world, but you're collecting rich data that's streaming to a database. And now your other teams, your performance teams, your reliability teams can start using this data to answer additional questions. And so this is a great moment for your teams to collaborate on the data, to really collaborate on this idea of, you know, building your best digital experience, launching the best app. We also allow you to annotate regions of the data. And so we have a practice we call visual analytics, where you can annotate different regions of the data and ask HeadSpin to run machine learning on demand to answer specific questions about those regions. So we have a certain visual analytics called page load, where anytime the user interacts with your application, whether it's typing a search term, whether it's loading a page, HeadSpin can automatically quantify how long it took the application to respond to that interaction. So from the time I typed in a search term to the time the results showed up on the page, HeadSpin's able to automatically measure that, you know, using computer vision techniques. And so what's really powerful is you can insert this visual analytics within your test. And HeadSpin has a number of these APIs that you can mix into your existing Appium tests, your existing Espresso tests, or whatever test frameworks you're using. And these are just RESTful APIs. You can mix them in, and HeadSpin can start augmenting your test with additional performance and modes of interaction. And so if you go back to some of our previous webinars on our media platform, you can see that we have other modes of interaction, such as audio, camera, that you can also start mixing into your testing. Performance is something with Create-Your-Own-Lab that we're really focused on. So we're focused on, with Create-Your-Own-Lab, allowing you to connect your device, allowing you to run visual analytics, and really zoom in on specific regions of your application to measure those performance. And what's great is when you start adding visual analytics to your sessions, it's additional data points that you can start tracking. So you can track how your page load is changing over time. You can track how the time to respond of your application is changing over time. And we have a practice at HeadSpin called regression. And so every time we collect data on this platform, this data is going into a data pipeline. There's a SQL database where you can grab all the data out in bulk. You can build dashboards on it. And we have a dashboarding tool built into the HeadSpin platform as well. But we can also run what we call regression analysis on this data. So every time you're running automation on our platform, it's creating data traces, and then we can run regression automatically. And so what that looks like is you set up what we call regression workers. So regression workers are comparisons between two buckets. So there's an A bucket and a B bucket. And these are specified using a little language at HeadSpin we call selectors. So I can specify different criteria for the bucket. So for example, my latest build versus my previous build, or this hour versus yesterday at the same hour, or this hour versus 1 week ago at the same hour. And you can specify as many of these buckets as you want. And what happens is when you're collecting data, we're running analysis on these buckets continuously. And we're surfacing where we think there's a change in the user experience and performance between these two buckets. And this is really powerful because you can use this both in your testing itself to fail the build. So for example, one way you can use these regression workers is you can run your entire test suite and then compare your current build to your previous build, compare the performance. And if you notice that, for example, the time to load the page is getting significantly slower, the time for the search box to respond is getting slower. If you notice that the API calls are getting slower, maybe some of the server are now slower to connect, or some of the servers are slower to respond with content. If you notice that some of the function calls are getting slower, the regression worker is able to pick all of this up in a statistically meaningful way and surface where there was a meaningful regression between the current build and the previous build. And so now within your test itself, at the very end of your test, you can basically run your test as usual, just running your Appium test or your espresso. HeadSpin's collecting the data, and then at the end you can ask HeadSpin, was there a performance regression along any of these criteria? You know, the current build versus the previous build, maybe one edge versus another edge. Maybe it's even one device type versus a different device type, or a good known baseline device type. Was there a regression in any of these dimensions? And if the answer is yes, there's a JSON API where the HeadSpin platform responds with whether there was a regression, and it tells you where the regression was. If the answer is yes, you can actually fail your build. And you can say, okay, well, not only did we do a functional testing criteria of our build where we ran our test and we made sure everything responded correctly, but now we can also do performance testing criteria. And it's extremely easy to basically do that with Create-Your-Own-Lab, because we just plug in our devices, run our tests on all these endpoints, and collect the data automatically. And then we can just ask questions of the data and fail the build. And when you fail the build, HeadSpin provides a URL that deep links you to a reason why the build failed. And so that looks like a UI on the left here, where essentially when the build fails, we give you a snapshot of, okay, here's the new build, here's the previous build. We annotate the snapshot with different regions of the screen where we've noticed user experience issues or slowness that could be improved. And you can see how the traces of the new build versus the previous build are changing. You can see differences in where those annotations are, where the slowness shifted to in the new build. And those differences are the changes that the regression is really keying in on. And so if in the new build, you notice maybe there's more orange, there's more regions that are having issues, you can hover over those regions. We tell you what we think the issues are. And you can scroll down into the details to show you exactly where within those different categories of network calls, of visual analytics labels, of issues, where exactly the differences are in terms of what got worse and what got better. And you can dive into the details to even specific API calls that got worse and really get a sense of what's getting worse in your application. And so at HeadSpin, our mission is to make it easy for your team to collaborate with your devices. Our view is that our infrastructure is extremely flexible. So we allow you to plug in your own devices and use your own devices. We also host devices where you can access locations that you might not have team members. We have a large hosted infrastructure where you can just pull up devices where you need them. We also have an on-premise deployment infrastructure. So we can actually deploy our infrastructure on-premise within your site. It's secure, it's air-gapped. Basically, you get everything in a box that can just run on your site. And so we see at HeadSpin a mixing of all these ways of working. We also have a media platform that helps you test audio and camera performance and interacting in new ways, kind of living room in a box, how all your devices are interacting with each other. And so we allow you to mix all this together into a single common platform. And that single platform is a place where your entire team can come and collaborate, can share data, can work on the same application. They can connect to different devices, each other's devices, and it becomes a collaboration platform. It also enables you to debug in the field and in testers' hands and your colleagues' hands right when issues are found. So this allows you to really fast track the resolution process. So when an issue is found in an application, instead of trying to reproduce it, you can actually, everything in our platform has a URL. You can directly connect to it. You can just Slack someone a URL and say, here's the device, here's the issue. It's in a bad state right now. Directly connect to it. And you can actually debug it and iterate and get to the resolution on the spot. You don't have to try to reproduce it on a similar device, etc. And so this is radically speeding up the development process. It's letting your team really just get the issue solved, really focus on solving things, reducing the number of tickets that are cannot reproduce, and hopefully just reducing the overall number of tickets. Because just like chat has come along and really reduced the number of emails, the way HeadSpin is you can collaborate so fluidly on these devices. You can connect the devices and share them so easily that there's really no need to file tickets in some cases. You can just directly connect to a device and debug and get the issue solved. And so it's a whole new way of working where you're just very easily able to use devices, debug on real devices, collect data on real devices, and this works across all your teams. So your product engineering, your reliability teams, your product management teams, your performance teams, and your testing teams can all use the same platform and collaborate. And so we think this is incredibly powerful. And with Create-Your-Own-Lab, you can just plug in devices and get going. It's extremely easy. And you can also reuse your existing device investment on the HeadSpin platform. So if you've already invested in devices that are sitting in a room, you can just immediately, without even modifying how you're currently using those devices, you can still use them in a room on your CI/CD server, but you can immediately connect them to HeadSpin platform and get so much more value from those same devices. And so what we think is this can really augment your existing device practice. Also, we're working on iOS support. So we're super excited about iOS. So I've just kind of gone through and showed a bunch of Android stuff. iOS is something we've deployed with a number of our select customers. We're working to open this up. And what we're doing with iOS is making app signing extremely seamless. So that's obviously an area with iOS that is typically a stumbling point. Is how do you sign applications? So we have a whole new signing system coming out where essentially it makes this whole process of signing. Anyone can plug in applications and the signing can be done so seamlessly on those devices. We're working on making this whole signing process very seamless and distributed. So we're really excited to launch this in the near future. And of course, when it launches, please join our mailing list. And of course, we'll be sending product updates when that launches. So with that, that's a quick intro to Create-Your-Own-Lab. I'd like to hand it off to Ilya to do a demo and to go deeper into the product and show how it works. So over to you, Ilya.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody, for sticking with us here. So I'm going to share my screen and start the demo. In the meantime, I invite you all to head over to the chat window and post any questions that you have, and we'll be happy to get to those, at the end of the webinar. So for the demo, I'm going to try to go through some of the items that Brian touched on in the presentation, just to kind of, show it and make it a little more live for you folks. So as you can see here, this is a pool of devices that HeadSpin provides, and they're in all different locations, South Korea and Mexico and Miami and Mountain View. So really, all over the world, all different kinds of devices. We got, Samsungs and Google Pixels, and we have, here we have actually a Roku device that we have in one of our audiovisual boxes. We have an iPad. We have a Amazon Fire Stick or an Apple TV for you folks that are doing apps for video content, and even an NVIDIA Shield if you want to try out some of the gaming stuff. But I don't have access to a Note 9. And so in that case, I can actually go and plug in my own Note 9 here into my laptop. And there's the local device, as you see here. Now, with a HeadSpin device, like if I start this S6 in Japan, one of the cool things is I can take this remote device that's not in my hand and actually connect it to the platform over here, right? So if I do this and it connects the device to my local machine, then I'll be able to access it from here. So, as you see now, I have two devices. And this is awesome, right? This is a device that HeadSpin provides, and I can now treat it as a local device. And I can, for example, grab the logcat live off of this device like so, and I'll get the logcat from there. Well, similarly, what I may want to do is give my colleague in Japan access to my device over here. And I can do that by providing the device onto HeadSpin. So actually, the first thing I'm going to do is just disconnect from this device. Let's do that. And then I still have my device. So now I'm just going to run this provide command. So basically, I'm taking the HeadSpin tool, I'm providing my personal API token and the serial or UDID of my device here, and I'm providing it onto the HeadSpin platform. So if I disconnect from this guy, go back to the hosts, this operation takes just a few seconds, and it says, hey, your device has been provided, and now it is available on the HeadSpin platform. So in this case, it should be here, and as you can see, it's preparing now. So what's happening right now is the device that's physically in my hand is getting the HeadSpin application installed on it so that we can control it. And now, as you can see, it's ready to go. So I'm just going to start this device, just like I did with the device in Japan. And this device is, in my hand, and this is my actual personal phone. I've just disabled some notifications, and, we can do things, right? We can pull up a browser, and, this will show me the HeadSpin site that I've previously gone to. We can go to a different site, like, I don't know, CNN or something, right? And, I can interact with my device and I can use it. I can pull up, applications, or I can use the web browser like we're doing here. And as you can see, the, the performance is perfectly good here. And similarly, with the same user interface, I can do anything that I can do with one of the other HeadSpin devices. So I can go into, my settings, for example, or I can, open up a browser instance over here, which will go and open my Chrome. We can take screenshots. The other cool thing is, we can record a session, right? So recording a session is a big part of what Brian talked about, because once you capture a session on the device, then we collect all the statistics and metrics off of that device. And now we can start providing some information about what happened. Were there any delays? Were there any rendering problems? And we can do this with or without network capture. So when I turn on the with network capture option, what's essentially happening right now is there's a man-in-the-middle proxy that's starting up on my personal phone over here. And that will allow me to capture the traffic on my phone, whether it's on Wi-Fi or, 4G, 5G, anything. And it's also going to connect my phone to a bunch of telemetry capture so that it can capture, CPU usage and battery metrics and other things. So, the capture is now ready. And so if I pull up, let's say we pull up a game, for example, right? And we go into one of these games, like say Subway Surfer, it will capture a bunch of metrics off of my phone, right? So it'll capture the network metrics, it'll capture the video. And of course, we can interact with the game. We can go into it. We can, test for various things. And everything is happening on my device. So now if I exit the game and then go back to the home screen, if I stop the recording, then we'll be able to actually see exactly what happened. And you know, what this will do is it will give me this page where we're basically listing out a few different things, right? So at the top here, we have some standard kind of average metrics, right? So if I look at the, you know, the domain, or if I look at a specific host that was being captured, you know, this is the, you know, kind of traffic summaries. I can download an MP4 of the entire interaction that happened on the screen, or we can actually look at it on this timeline where I can slide the slider across and you can see exactly what was happening at any particular point in time, you know, or we can just play the video. And as you can see, even though the video is being recorded on the HeadSpin server from my phone remotely over the network, the, you know, frame rate is good, the video quality is good. So the capture is entirely effective. I also get the device log, and of course I can download the network traffic. And then here we have various indicators that we're capturing, like, you know, blurriness and brightness and downsampling, screen change. We have things around the network in and out. We have battery current, which is being measured off of my remote device, and a bunch of other UI and other indicators here. And then we have some of the network traffic that was allowed to be captured. And then on the left-hand side, we're basically identifying specific areas of interest. Now, that's for this particular, you know, app. Of course, we can do this with a website or with any other application. But the other thing we can do is run automation. So one of the scenarios Brian mentioned is, look, if you have colleagues in different parts of the country or different parts of the world, if you want other folks to jump on the device and use it, they can in this platform, right? So now that I shared my device to HeadSpin, anyone that's in my team can actually log in no matter where they are in the world, and they can access this device just like I am right now. The other thing you can do is actually add this in the pool of devices that are available for automation. So for example, if I want to run Appium on this device, all I need is the WebDriver URL and the device ID over here. And it just so happens that I have a very nice, simple Appium script right here to run on the eBay app. So I'm just going to update the device ID, and I have my personal token, and I have the device URL for the Appium server, right? This is a WebDriver URL. And this is a very simple script just to show you before I exit here. So we're basically just setting up some standard Appium capabilities. We're going to try to remove a splash screen. We're going to basically look at the search box and do a quick search for pizza ovens, right? And then just basically sleep there. So if I, in fact, I don't need to do anything there. What I can do is exit the device, and the device goes back to an available state. And now I'm just going to run my simple Appium script. So as the script starts up, I'll just move this over a little bit. So what you'll see is as the script contacts the Appium server, the device goes into this read-only mode. I have my Appium log that's going to populate over here. I have the device frames, which will come in a moment. And what's happening again right now is same thing that we did manually from the user interface, right? It's basically starting that man-in-the-middle capture on the device. And it's going to set up again all of the recording and telemetry profiles on the device. So that takes about 30 seconds. And then when it's ready, the rest of the Appium script is going to run for us over here. Oh. Let's just do that one more time. I should have it configured correctly. Yep. That was configured correctly. Okay, great. So now the recording is up and running, ready to go. So we're just waiting for the rest of the Appium, and there it goes. So we have the Appium test is starting to run. And in a few moments, you'll see the screen reflecting that on the device. I think it should be, there it is. So there's the eBay app. Now it's going to see if there's a splash screen, which clearly there isn't in this case. So I think I have that set for a few seconds to just see if there's a splash screen and get rid of it. And if there isn't, it will move on to searching. So there it goes. It went to the search screen. It's going to enter a search parameter. And then basically the search is going to complete. And in a couple seconds, the Appium test will mark the test as passed, and it will conclude. And then I can show you another couple of things that Brian talked about which is essentially what we can do with this information that we're gathering here and what kinds of settings or capabilities the HeadSpin platform has for us. So if I go into the performance session over here and I start looking at this particular test, so there's my test, right? And it passed. And I can actually go in here and look at the information. Now, the analysis is still in progress. It takes a few minutes for the system to gather up everything, so it will sort of populate as we go. But one of the things that you see is, when the eBay app starts, at some point we're doing this search. And the interesting thing about the platform, of course, is, when you're doing the search, one of the questions that would be very reasonable at this point is, okay, how long did the search take? So we have this concept of a page load API. What I can do is select an area like this one here, and I can ask the HeadSpin system to do a page load analysis. So in this case, it will be the search time. And what the system will do is take this gray region and it will actually go through it and identify the first time that there's a screen change, which is right here. And then the last time, which is where the screen is fully loaded. Of course, it takes some time, right? First, there's this, spinner, then there's the data is there, but not the images. And then finally the images come in. So that's, and then the background turns to white. So that is when it's ready. So we can click on this and see that, hey, that took 730 milliseconds, which is great. So that is one of the capabilities that I did manually in the user interface, but I could actually change my Appium test to do this automatically every time that there is a transition. So we could look at things like how long it takes to get the app up and running, how long it takes to load the first screen. I can change the test to go into various categories. Whatever you want to do with the app, you are able to measure not only pass fail for the whole test, but also look at non-functional indicators such as the time it takes to load a page or do a search or pull up a menu item, whatever your app or your website is doing. And this, as I mentioned, could be automated. And so when you go into our performance monitoring section, all of the eBay tests that I've run have basically shown up in here. And of course, this is looking at all the different locations and all the different tests that I've run. So if I look at it based on the this is the, of course, ID that I showed you earlier for my personal phone. These are the two tests that were run, one just before the webinar as a setup and one right now for the, in the actual demo that you folks saw. So that was before, that was after. And now each of these, I can pull it up in detail. So this is what happened in the earlier test. This is, of course, the one we were looking at. Oh, sorry, not that one. This one here was the one we were looking at earlier, right? This was the one I ran before the webinar. In that case, I was not recording network traffic, but it's the same, same idea. And in fact, if we, properly tag these, we could then actually do the little regression indication. So this could be, eBay, let's say build one. Obviously, this isn't really testing different builds of eBay. I don't have access to the eBay app, of course, but in your own testing, if you were to run multiple builds, you would be able to automatically tag them. Again, I'm doing this in the user interface, but actually you can make that part of the run. So your CI pipeline can automatically flag or tag each session, as it comes up. And then what we can do is basically go in here and do the regression analysis where I can pull up eBay build 1, I can pull up eBay build 2, and basically the system will allow us to create a regression analysis between these two sessions. So just takes a moment to load the appropriate sessions over here. And there it is, one here. And then we can look at the regressions. By the way, you're not limited to just one session at a time, right? If I ran the eBay app 10 times for 2 different builds, then I can compare 10 builds against 10 builds. And we could look at, what the difference is running these. So, in this case, in the first test, the battery energy drain was actually a little bit more significant than the second time around, which kind of makes sense because I haven't personally used the eBay app for a while. So I ran the test just before the webinar. I ran it again with you folks on the webinar. And so there would be presumably more things that are cached, and therefore the battery usage would be a little bit, faster. We can also look at things like page load. So I put in the page load for the, search time, right? And I did that in the second one. So that's the delta there. If I go back and do that for the first one, it would show up in here as well. So basically you're able to run this across different tests. And as you can see, you can have lots of different tests. We have, the wiki app and speed test and so on. And as Brian mentioned, we're going to have the ability to do this for iOS devices pretty soon. And you'll be able to bridge an iOS device to the platform. Today, you can use any of the HeadSpin provided iOS devices, and the capabilities are the same, right? You can capture the traffic, you can, record sessions, you can record the network capture and so on. And of course, you can, arbitrarily compare these against each other and see what the issues are. So that's, in a nutshell, this capability that we're talking about today, which is basically take one or more of your own devices and share them onto the HeadSpin platform. Why would you do that? Well, as Brian mentioned, right? Number one, if you want somebody else to take a look at something that you see on your device and help you debug it, or vice versa, if a colleague is asking you for help debugging an issue, you can simply jump on their device exactly in the state it's in and debug the issue. Another reason might be if you have a bunch of devices and you're not using them at a certain point in time, you can share them on the platform, and a different team, maybe in a different, time zone, can take advantage of those devices. Another reason might be to run automation on the local devices, or maybe have a different team that has the automation capabilities running on your devices in your lab, or vice versa. And finally, folks have, because of COVID, of course, many folks are working from home, and that means that a lot of testers ended up taking certain devices with them to test. And so now you have a bunch of devices distributed in people's homes. You could basically add them all back onto the HeadSpin platform, and folks can use it whether they're at home or in a different home, or back in the office. You can basically take all those devices, put them on the HeadSpin platform, and there's your lab. And that's why we call it Create Your Own Lab. So with that, I'm going to stop my demo. If there are any questions, we'd be very happy to answer them now. Please let us know.
Yeah, thanks, Brian and Ilya. We do have a few questions coming in. One of them is, where's the Appium server running in this case of simple pizza search? And they said, sorry, I'm a bit new to the cloud way of Appium setup.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure. Great. Go ahead, Brian.
Ilya, I'd love to answer this one. Yeah, so this is something that we are super excited about in terms of Create Your Own Lab, is that HeadSpin, we have a deep experience working with the Appium team, running Appium in the cloud. And so to answer your question, the Appium server runs seamlessly in the cloud. And what you'll see is with the HeadSpin platform, HeadSpin Appium is actually a multi-version, type Appium. So you can run any version of Appium against your device using a simple capability. So for example, if you want to run Appium 1.17 or Appium 1.20, it's actually just a simple capability to choose the Appium version that you're actually using against your device. So we let you choose which version. We're also, very soon we'll be rolling out Appium 2.0 in the cloud, which I think is extremely exciting with all the new driver support coming with Appium 2.0. But the simple answer is that the Appium runs in the cloud, and you can choose the version that you want to run. If you don't choose the version, we actually choose a good default version for you, which we're continually updating based on what we think is the latest, most stable version from our testing. But what's really great about this is essentially we've optimized our Appium server for stability and be able to run your tests 24/7. So if you look at our Android and iOS and our other endpoints that we support, you're able to just really point your tests at our cloud Appium server and run it. And you can just run these tests 24/7. And you shouldn't really see an issue with having to restart the server, maintain the server, et cetera. What's also really great is our cloud Appium server manages concurrency. So you can run multiple tests at the same time against the same device, and those tests queue up correctly and execute correctly in sequence. And also what you get out of the box with our cloud Appium server is what we call our load balancer, where if you have multiple devices connected, you can easily distribute tests among those devices, depending on different criteria. So there's a lot of stuff we give you with our Appium server in the cloud that you don't have to set up. For example, if you're setting up your own local Appium server, we remove all that overhead of having to learn how to set this stuff up, having to coordinate your tests, having to create queues to manage your tests. All that's handled seamlessly in the cloud with our platform. Ilya, anything you want to add to that?
No, Brian, I think that was a very comprehensive answer. Is there any other questions that folks have?
Yeah, another one came through asking, saying, that's awesome. I think just what Brian was just mentioning. Does this mean that irrespective of tech stack that an automation engineer uses, Java test ng, Python, Ruby, TypeScript, we just point to the headspin and run the tests?
Yep, that's exactly it. And yeah, great follow-up. That's how we see it. So we see headspin as you just take the URL, the WebDriver URL of the device or the device ID with our load balancer, and you're able to just run the tests. You don't have to do any setup of Appium server. You just plug in the URL and run the test. So just like you said, whichever client framework you're using, you just plug in our URL and the capabilities, and then hit run, and you can see the tests running on the platform. You can watch the screen of the device. You can watch the logs in real time, and then you can also record and have a recording of the session as well.
Great. Yeah, and earlier I think Ilya mentioned about connecting a device to headspin. Can you limit and do certain permissions to certain users? So maybe not like the entire team can have access. Like, are there certain permissions you can set who can access the device?
Yep, that's right. So we have and there was a follow-up question on that as well. Just before I jump into Teams, just to quickly answer, I think there was a follow-up question about WebDriver IO. Yes, we support WebDriver IO. We also, if you look at our Appium server, we support a number of on Appium 1, we support a number of the plugins, such as Flutter. So we've done a lot of work with the Appium community supporting Flutter and these different plugins. And what you'll see with Appium 2 is you'll see a very advanced system where you can choose your own plugins when you run. So yes, we integrate with many of these client libraries out there. And if there's one that doesn't work on our platform, we have a tight collaboration with the Appium community, and we will work to make it work. So just wanted to address that final question about WebDriver IO. But then yes, about teams and permissions. Yes, we have a team and permission system. You're able to create multiple teams. You're able to allocate devices to different teams, and then those devices are only accessible by those teams. And so we have a rich, or what we call organization management UI, where you can set up different teams and allocate devices to different teams. Great question.
Great. Another question is, can I test sensor integration with the app?
So this is an amazing use case of Create-Your-Own-Lab. So just like Ilya showed, I can have a device on my desk that's, for example, integrating with all the IoT devices and all the sensors, on my desk, right? So I can have my smart speakers next to me. I can have everything, my smart TV next to me. It can be connected as a remote control device against my smart TV. It can be listening, obviously to audio in the room, right? And this is an amazing capability of Create Your Own Device to basically be able to put a device into a real scenario and then connect to it and run automation and debug in that real scenario. And so yes, since this is a real device, you basically, this device can be put anywhere, connected to a computer, and then you run the headspin bridge binary, and then the device shows up on our UI. So you can use all the sensors and all the real telemetry coming off this real device, because it is actually a real device, put into a real location. On the enterprise side, we actually have the ability to also wirelessly connect these Android devices to the platform. That's an enterprise feature that we're able to do too. So you can actually even put these devices into wireless scenarios where they're sort of connected wirelessly to the platform. So there's a lot of opportunity to put these devices in scenarios where they can integrate with real sensors and go deeper into using real sensor data. Ilya, anything you want to add to that?
No, Brian, that's a great answer. And yeah, that is a great use case that can be supported by our platform.
Great. Another question I see is, could we use this to compare performance of our video app to other video apps? I'm guessing they're just asking about headspin in general.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So HeadSpin is agnostic to the app that's being run. So as you can see in Ilya's demo, there's no instrumentation or changes needed to the app to collect data. So he just installed the app and ran and collected data. So yes, I mean, you can run any app on the HeadSpin platform and collect data. You get these performance sessions, and as Ilya showed, there's these APIs and UIs where you can compare different buckets of sessions. And there's also a database that you can use to query the data out. So you can put any app into our platform and collect data on any app. So I think that yes, you can. I mean, we do see scenarios where there's comparisons and benchmarking, et cetera, using our platform.
Great. And Ilya had shown us some like Roku, Fire Sticks. Does this also work with voice assistant apps like Alexa and Google Home devices as well?
Great questions. So we have a very specific platform called Media Platform. So that's in addition to Create-Your-Own-Lab. So our view at HeadSpin is all of these platforms work together. And typically what we see is our customers use like a mix and match of different technologies when they put together, a platform to enable their teams to move faster. So we do have a media platform that's really focused on voice assistance, on measuring, being able to inject and measure voice performance, being able to record voice, and measure the performance of how not only the applications, but different devices are responding to voice, being able to watch the devices in real time, like the different lights on the devices, and being able to see the devices through a camera, being able to look at sort of content on a screen, and how all this comes together into a cohesive experience. So that's what we call our media platform. It works in conjunction with Create-Your-Own-Lab. So typically what you can do is you can run some of your testing with Create-Your-Own-Lab and some of your testing with the media platform. And what happens is when we work with you to create a HeadSpin platform for your needs is a good amount of your testing it can be done with Create-Your-Own-Lab, and then maybe we add some media platform to help you with some of these specific Roku and voice assistant scenarios, but it's all the same platform. Your team uses it the same way. Your team collaborates in the same way. It's just in our world, the media platform has a different deployment model. So it's not plug and play in terms of you plug in your own Roku. It's we basically have an on-premise or hosted model for the media platform where you put the Roku into a specific environment, and then you can remotely use the audio and video capabilities. So slightly different deployment model, but it uses the same platform and the same data and the same way of measuring. And that's what Ilya would be happy to work with you to set up a deployment that meets your needs. Anything to add to that, Ilya?
Just to stress what you already said, Brian, which is, media devices are becoming more and more important, and they are harder to test, especially remotely. So whether that's a set-top box or a new kind of streaming device or an Alexa or, a Google type device, and now there's even more of them on the market and they're more and more interactive. So our media platform with the AV box really allows us to set up a lot of these kinds of test scenarios and, really automate testing that before would have to be done manually by a person in a room with a speaker, so this is something that will really unblock a lot of the test automation capabilities of teams that are doing this kind of testing. And we are working with all the, large, or I guess the well-known automation devices, such as the Google and Alexa and some of the other ones. So we've done this before. We would love to show you that if you contact either Brian or myself, or if you contact just use the contact us on the website and let us know. We'd be happy to do a demo and show off some of those.
Great. I don't see any more questions coming in at the moment, so I think we're good unless anyone has any last minute questions. You're always welcome to email us as well. And we'd be happy to set up a personalized demo, as Ilya said. But I think that's it. Thank you all for joining, and thank you, Brian and Ilya, for presenting.
Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Have a good day.